Illuminate the smoke from the other side as well, but I want it to be a lot darker back here. Maybe one more copy on the other side. Uncheck auto activate and activate it again so you can see what it looks like from the start. And so we have a very simple, heavy, dry ice, cryogenic smoke, whatever you want to call it. And in the next video, we're gonna add some sparks and electricity. You can start working on the sparks. So in your VFX folder, right click, Niagara system, create an empty system. Let's call it ns_sparks. And right click, add minimal emitter. Again, F2 sparks. Under emitter update, we need a spawn rate. And I'll set it to 75. Under particle spawn, let's search for shape. And we need the shape location module. And basically, I want to just spawn them in between these pillars. So I need some kind of a long shape. So for us, it'll just be a cylinder. For the cylinder radius, I did around 40, and the height will have to adjust. Let's try 1250 to start. But I need it to lay flat. So down here under rotation mode, I can set it to axis angle. Then let's go under initialize particle, sprite size, uniform. And I want them to have different sizes. So you can click on the arrow and do random range float and set it to between 0.5 and 1. And for the color mode, we can set that to random range and just give it a range between like a bright orange and like a dark bloody orange. And so each particle will have a color somewhere between the range of these two colors. Now the lifetime I also want to randomize. So random range float between 3 and 6. I want them to have a little bit of initial velocity. So under particle spawn, let's search for add velocity. Make sure you add the solve forces and velocity module. I'll say in cone. And the cone axis should be going up. So 0 on the X and 1 on the Z. And I want to randomize the velocity as well. So random range float between, let's say, 50 and 100. I'm not sure if it's hard for you to see them. I'll just make them bigger for the time being while we set this up so you can see it easily. So now I want them to fall down under the force of gravity. So like we learned, particle update, because I need to affect them with gravity over time. So I'll search for gravity module. And I want to randomize that as well and make it not as strong. So again, arrow and random range vector with 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, and the Z axis can be between -150 and -450. So let's drag it into our scene so we can see what it looks like. Okay, so pretty good start. We need to make them brighter. We also need to add some curl noise so they're not falling down in a straight line. And then we need to adjust the cylinder height so it fits in between our pillars perfectly. I think we could do more particles, so spawn rate 100. Next, particle update, let's add a curl noise force. Actually, let's randomize the strength as well. So random range float, you really just want to randomize everything when it comes to these kind of effects to make them look realistic. So we're going to keep doing that a lot. So I'll do minimum 300 and maximum 600. I also want them to collide with the ground, so we need a collision module. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so right now they're just gonna be bouncing around way too much. So let's set the restitution to 0. And I basically don't want them to bounce at all because they should just like fall into snow and just stay stuck in the snow. So the friction value can actually go above 1. So I'll just set the friction to 10. So now when they hit the ground, they stay almost stuck. Maybe they move just a little bit. So I also want them to scale down. We already know how to do that. Particle update and search for scale sprite size. And we can just use this preset, this ramp up and down. But I'm gonna move the middle point closer to the beginning. So I'll just do 0.1. So they get big very fast and they slowly get smaller. In fact, they should probably remain big for a bit longer. So I'll add another key in here and just move it a bit higher like this. So this way they will start getting really small only after they hit the ground pretty much. So now let's make them brighter. And for that, we can use a scale color module. So here you have scale RGB and scale alpha. If you set the alpha to 0, they will become transparent, right? Alpha just controls opacity, basically. So what we want to change is the scale RGB, but it's split into red, green, and blue. And I want to control it with just one number. So I'll click on the arrow again and say vector from float. And so now I just get a multiplier basically for the brightness. So I can set this to 100 or even 1000. And now we have nice glowing particles. However, they all glow at the exact same brightness, and they also remain bright until they die. And I would like their brightness to die off before they die. So I will go to the arrow next to the value here and say float from curve. And this will give me a curve that actually controls the brightness of the particles. So right now, because the scale curve is set to 1, their brightness is 1 at the beginning of their life and 0 at the end. If I set this to 500, then their brightness is 500 in the beginning and 0 at the end. So they gradually lose their brightness as they get older. But I want to randomize this value as well. So I'll click on the arrow and say random range float and randomize it between 400 to 1000. And then the curve, basically I want them to just lose brightness after they hit the ground and they're in the snow already. So I'll right click and add another key here and just move it up so they remain bright for longer. And so now after they hit the ground, they glow for a little bit, and then as they start getting smaller, they lose their brightness and they die off. Maybe I'll just move this point a little bit to the left. Okay, so now we just need to make this emitter fit in between the pillars. So I will actually just turn off the velocity and turn off the curl noise and gravity. And you gotta turn off soul forces and velocity as well so they actually stay in place. So now we can see exactly where that cylinder shape is, and I can just undock this shape location, cylinder height, and just start lowering the height until it fits well in between the pillars. Okay, so about 900 for me, and I'll lower the cylinder radius to 35. And we can enable soul forces, gravity, and curl noise, and add velocity again. Okay, and final improvement, we can make them emit some light so they actually illuminate the ground. And for that, you can go under render and add the light renderer module. And I'll set the diffuse scale to 5 and radius scale to 5. This will make them brighter and also make them illuminate a larger radius around the particle. And so you should get something like this. It's definitely more stylized than realistic. If you were going for something more realistic, you could definitely lower the brightness and the radius. But basically what I'm going for is that warm, cold lighting. So I want the ground to have that orange illumination from the particles, and then the rest of the environment to have that blue color, which I thought looked pretty nice. Okay, and maybe the particles are a bit too emissive on the ground, so let's do diffuse scale 2.5 and let's do less of them. So spawn rate back to 75, and finally we need to copy it in between all the pillars. So I'll just grab it and hold Alt and make a copy, and one more, Alt, make a copy. Luckily these are basically instances, so we can still just control them with that one Niagara system, right? You can see that here you have NS Sparks 2 and 3, but if you do Control E, it takes you back to the original Niagara system sparks, so we can control the settings for all of these at once. All right, and I did make the sparks bigger so you could see them, but now they feel a bit too big. So under Initialize Particle, I will set the size back to 0.5 and 1. So here you go. This will definitely look better once we add the lightning, but sparks are something that you will need for almost everything VFX related. But luckily, now that we've set them up once, we will just keep reusing these sparks in all of the following shots in the course. We covered a lot of different techniques and modules here. We learned how to change their brightness over time, their size over time. We used the shape location module We learned how to use the light renderer to make them actually emit light. We worked on some collisions and friction.